The wallet was still sitting on his kitchen table when Marcus got home, and the house was quiet in the way it only got after 9 o'clock, after his daughter had cried herself to sleep, and the dishes were done, and there was nothing left standing between him and the thing he still had to do. He had found it 3 hours earlier, wedged under the bench at the bus stop on Clement Avenue, right where the number 14 turned around. A brown leather wallet, fat with cards, with a driver's license tucked in the front slot behind a strip of worn plastic. He had held it in both hands under the flickering overhead light and looked at the license for a long time. Darnell Watts, 47. A Langford Street address that Marcus recognised as the far side of the city's commercial district. The good side, the side with the glass buildings and the underground parking structures and the restaurants with no prices showing in the window. Inside the wallet there were 6 credit cards and $240 in cash. Marcus had counted it twice, not because he wanted the money, but because he needed to know exactly what was there so nobody could say later that anything was missing. He counted it a second time and folded it back closed and sat there on the cold bench for a moment with the wallet in his lap. He thought about the man on the license. He thought about what it felt like to reach for something and find it gone. He had done that himself, not with a wallet, but with other things, the kind of things you reach for in the night and cannot find, and he knew the particular quality of that fear. He got on the bus going south toward home, the wallet in his inside pocket where he could feel it. He set the wallet on the table next to his daughter Amara's crayon drawing of a bird, and he looked at both of them for a moment. Then he looked at the $11.30 balance on his phone's prepaid account and the notice taped to the refrigerator door, the one from the City Transit Authority telling him his monthly bus pass had been suspended for a missed automatic payment, 11 days ago now. He had been working around it, getting rides when he could, walking when he could not, doing the math on each trip the way you do when the math matters and there is no room for error. He did not have bus fare. He had not had bus fare in 11 days. He thought about calling the police non-emergency line and having them hold the wallet. He thought about sliding it under a mail slot somewhere and being done with it. He thought about going to bed and dealing with it in the morning, because he was tired in the way that particular brand of tired feels when you have been managing every single thing alone for a long time, and your body has started to treat exhaustion as a normal operating condition. He thought about a lot of things he was not going to do. And then he put on his second pair of shoes, the ones with the cracked right sole he kept meaning to fix, and he went to his neighbour Mrs. Polk to see if she would listen for Amara while he was gone. "At this hour?" Mrs. Polk said through the screen. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "I found something that isn't mine." She looked at him for a moment. She had known Marcus for 4 years. She had watched him carry groceries up 3 flights of stairs without complaining, and she had watched him sit with Amara on the front steps doing reading homework with the same patience he brought to everything. And she had watched him wave to her every morning on his way to the bus stop, even when he clearly had not slept enough and the day in front of him was going to be long. She opened the door. He left at 9:17. He knows the exact time because he checked his phone when he stepped off the porch, the way a person does when they want a record of when something started. What he did not know, what would not become clear to him until much later, was that someone had already started watching. Marcus Ellison was 34 years old. He was a warehouse picker for a regional grocery distributor, a job that paid $14.50 an hour and required him to be on his feet for 10 hours at a stretch, 4 days a week. He had held the job for 3 years, which was longer than he had held anything since Amara was born. He was proud of that. He had never been late. He had never called in for anything less than a genuine emergency. He had won the attendance award twice and framed both of them in the kitchen because there was no one else to frame them, and because they represented something about him that he wanted to be visible. Amara was 7. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, and she had been running a low fever since Tuesday that Marcus had been managing with children's medicine and cool cloths, and the particular kind of prayer that comes from a parent who does not have the money to take a child to a doctor and is hoping with everything in him that the fever stays low. He had called the nurse line twice. They told him to keep monitoring. He wrote down what they said in a notebook he kept on the nightstand, the same notebook where he tracked the duration of the fever and the times he gave the medicine and the temperature readings at 6 in the morning and 9 at night. Because he was that kind of father, the kind who wrote things down even when no one asked him to, the kind who kept records even when the records were only for himself. Her mother had left when Amara was 2. Marcus did not say much about that. He had stopped saying much about it around the time Amara stopped asking, which was when she was about 4.5, and which was one of the harder things Marcus had ever watched happen to a person he loved. He had sat with her one evening when she had asked where Mama was for the last time, and he had answered the question the way you answer a question when the truth is the only thing available and you have to make it as soft as you can. And something in her face had shifted, the way a child's face shifts when they are putting something away for good, and he had held her until she fell asleep, and then he had sat there in the dark for another hour thinking about what it meant to be everything. He had grown up about 6 miles north of where he now lived. His mother had been a postal worker, 23 years on the same route, never a lost parcel. His father had worked in building maintenance at the university until his knees gave out, and then he had worked the front desk at a parking facility until he retired, and then he had died of a stroke 2 years ago. And Marcus still thought about him sometimes, thought about the way his father used to read the newspaper on his lunch break, like the news was something that mattered to a man who had seen enough of the world to know better. His father had returned things too. Lost umbrellas. A child's backpack left on a city bench. Once a bag of groceries left on a bus, which he had carried 3 miles in the rain to an address on a receipt inside. Marcus had been 12. He had asked his father why he had gone to all that trouble. His father had said, "Because the groceries weren't mine." Marcus had thought about that a lot over the years, the simplicity of it, because it wasn't mine. The city at night had a different quality than the city in the daytime. Quieter, more honest, more. The people on the sidewalk at that hour were people with somewhere they had to be and no particular joy about getting there. Night shift workers and insomniacs and people walking dogs that did not know what time it was. Marcus walked among them with the wallet in his jacket pocket, his hand resting on it occasionally, the way you keep a hand on something you are responsible for. The commercial district was a long way from where he lived. He had looked it up on the transit app before he left, typed in the Langford Street address, 9 miles. He had decided before he even searched it that the distance was not going to be the deciding factor. He thought, walking, about what it would mean to find your wallet gone. He thought about the cards, the identification, the $240. He thought about how long it would take to cancel and replace everything, the phone calls and the offices and the waiting, and how much harder all of that was if you also did not have the cash the wallet had been holding when you lost it. $240 was $240. He was well aware of what $240 was. He did not think this made him exceptional. He thought it made him regular. He thought the regular thing to do when you found something that wasn't yours was to return it. He walked north along the river route because the river route had streetlights all the way, and he walked steadily, not fast and not slow, the way a man walks when he has made up his mind and does not need to convince himself anymore. The cracked right sole made a small sound against the wet pavement, a soft, irregular tick that he had gotten used to the way you get used to the sounds in your own apartment after a while. The radiator knock, the loose hinge on the cabinet door, the things that belong to your life and have stopped needing to be fixed. The river ran alongside him for a while, low and dark between its concrete banks, the city lights blurring on its surface. He had walked along this stretch many times. It was the route he took when the bus pass was working, and he rode to the end of the line and walked the last mile home, or on the occasions when the warehouse ran a late shift and the last bus had already gone and he needed to get back. He was not afraid of the walk. He was not afraid of much at this hour. What lived in him at that hour was closer to a kind of steadiness, the same steadiness he brought to the warehouse and to Amara's homework sessions and to the nurse line calls and to everything else. It was not calm exactly. It was commitment. It was the particular quality of a man who has learned that the way through is the only way. He had been walking for about 40 minutes when his phone buzzed with a notification from the prepaid service reminding him that his balance was low. He kept walking. His right shoe spoke softly against the pavement. His breath came in small visible clouds in the cool air. If you have ever done a good thing quietly, with no audience and no expectation of return, and you have done it in the dark and in shoes with a cracked sole, while your daughter slept with a fever at home, then you already understand something about this man that cannot be adequately explained. And if you have not, I hope you keep watching, because the thing about this story is that someone else understood it first. The cameras at the Clement Avenue bus stop had been installed the previous March during a city safety initiative that Marcus had read about in a free paper someone left on the bus and then forgotten entirely. They were small and angled outward over the bench, positioned to capture the full shelter and the sidewalk in front of it. The city had contracted the installation to a private firm that specialized in public safety infrastructure. The contract was worth $312,000. Darnell Watts did not own those cameras. He owned the company that had been contracted to install them. He found out his wallet was missing at 8:43 that evening when he reached for it at a restaurant 2 miles from his office and found his inside pocket empty. He retraced his afternoon in his head, fast and methodical, the way a man who has built and run a security infrastructure company for 19 years thinks through a problem. He had last used the wallet at the bus stop. He had been there for exactly 11 minutes, killing time before a car arrived, and he had sat on the bench and pulled the wallet out to check the time on a receipt. And then his phone had rung, and he had stood up quickly, and the wallet had slid out of his jacket onto the seat, and he had not noticed. He called his office manager, a woman named Renata, from the restaurant table. Renata had been with the company for 11 years and had learned long ago that when Darnell called with a particular kind of evenness in his voice, the matter was not small. "Pull the feed from the Clement Avenue Transit Shelter," he said. "Bus stop bench camera, starting about 4 this afternoon." Renata called him back in 12 minutes. "Mr. Watts," she said, "someone found it." "Did they take it somewhere?" "No," she said. "They picked it up and they read the license. Then they sat down and they counted the cash." There was a brief pause. "Then they put it in their pocket and they got on a bus." Darnell was quiet. "The bus? Going which direction?" "South," Renata said, "toward the Fillmore Corridor." Darnell thought about that. The Fillmore Corridor was residential, working class. It was not where someone would take a wallet to sell it. A person going to sell a wallet would move laterally, toward the kind of anonymous commercial density where transactions like that happened without much notice. Going south meant going home. "All right," he said. "Let me know if anything else comes up." He paid for his dinner and went home. His wife, Claudette, was already in bed reading. He told her about the wallet. She told him it would turn up. She said this with the particular confidence of a woman who has been married to a man long enough to know when the universe is taking care of something, and also because she had known Darnell for 22 years, and she understood that the way he told a story was always a little behind where his mind already was. At 11:14 that evening, the call came to the main line of Darnell's company. After hours, calls rolled to a service, but the service flagged it and sent him a text. And the text said, "Found wallet, trying to reach owner. Call when available." He called back in 2 minutes. "This is Darnell Watts." A man's voice came back, a little out of breath. "Sir, my name is Marcus. I found your wallet this evening at a bus stop on Clement Avenue. I have it here. I wanted to get it back to you." Darnell sat up straighter. "Where are you right now?" "I'm on Langford," Marcus said. "About 4 blocks from your address on the license. I'm sorry for the hour. I just wanted to make sure you got it tonight." Darnell looked at the clock on the nightstand. It was 11:16. Langford Street was 9 miles from Clement Avenue. "How did you get to Langford at this hour?" Darnell said. There was a brief pause on the other end. "I walked," Marcus said. "I don't have a bus pass right now." Darnell did not say anything for a moment. He stood up from the edge of the bed and walked to the window and looked out at the city, at the lights arranged across it, like a map of everything that was still happening while most people slept. "You walked 9 miles to return my wallet." "Yes, sir." "Tonight. This late." "I have a daughter at home," Marcus said, "so I wanted to get back as quick as I could, but I didn't want to wait until morning. Seemed like it would be a long night for you not knowing where it was." Claudette had put down her book. She was watching her husband from across the room. Darnell told Marcus to stay exactly where he was. He got in his car. The two men met on the corner of Langford and Birch, under a streetlight, at 11:22 at night. Marcus was standing with his hands in his jacket pockets, his breath faint in the cool air, his shoes leaving small, damp prints on the sidewalk. He was not shifting from foot to foot or checking his phone. He was simply standing, the way a man who has come a long way stands when he has arrived and has nothing to prove about having arrived. Darnell pulled up and got out, and they stood there for a moment, each one looking at the other. Marcus held out the wallet. Darnell took it with both hands, and he opened it, and he counted the cash quickly, and then he looked up. "It's all here," he said. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "I counted it twice so you'd know." Darnell stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. He was a man who read people for a living. He had built a company on the premise that character was visible, that behavior under observation revealed who a person was, and that the inverse was equally true, that behavior, when no one was watching, revealed who a person actually was. He had built entire client contracts around that premise. He had staked his business on it. He had never been wrong about it in a way that mattered. He thought about what Renata had told him. The man on the camera had counted the cash. Then he had put the wallet in his pocket. Then he had gotten on a bus going south toward the working part of the city, and then, apparently, he had walked 9 miles back in the other direction in the dark, in the cool, with shoes that had left small damp prints on the sidewalk. "I want to ask you something," Darnell said. Marcus waited. "Why didn't you just call the police and have them hold it?" Marcus thought about that for a moment. He was not a man who answered quickly in order to be done with a question. He answered when he had the answer. "Because I didn't want your night to be longer than it had to be," he said. "And because it wasn't mine to decide what happened to it." Darnell nodded slowly. He reached into the wallet and held out the $240. Marcus took a step back. "Sir, I can't take that." "It's not a reward," Darnell said. "It's what's in the wallet. You carried it 9 miles. You kept it whole. That money was with you for over 3 hours and you didn't touch it. That money's earned." "I didn't do it to earn anything." "I know," Darnell said. "That's the point." Marcus looked at the money in the extended hand. He thought about the transit notice on the refrigerator. He thought about Amara's fever. He thought about the nurse line and the 3 days of children's medicine left in the bottle, and the $87 in his bank account, and the particular mathematics of being a man who does not have enough, and who has learned to manage that fact without letting it make him someone different. He took the money. He put it in his jacket pocket next to the empty space where the wallet had been. He thanked the man twice quietly, and he turned to walk back the way he had come. "Wait," Darnell said. Marcus stopped. "Where do you work?" Marcus told him. "The warehouse. The grocery distributor. $14.50 an hour." Darnell looked at him for a moment. He looked at the shoes. He looked at the jacket, clean but thin for the weather. He looked at the face of a man who was 34 years old and had walked 9 miles in the dark and was now preparing to walk 9 more because there was nothing else available to him, and who showed no sign of self-pity about any of it. "What time do you need to be home?" "I've got a neighbour watching my daughter," Marcus said. "I don't want to keep her too long," Darnell said. "Get in the car. I'll drive you." The drive took 18 minutes. Marcus sat in the front seat of a car that was cleaner and quieter than any car he had been in for years, and the two men talked the way men talk when something between them has already been established, and the conversation is just the formality of getting to know it. Darnell asked about the warehouse work. Marcus described it without complaint. The hours and the pace and the cold in the loading bay in winter, and Darnell listened the way he listened to everything, with the particular attention of a man who has learned that people tell you exactly who they are if you let them get there on their own. Darnell asked about Amara. Marcus told him about the fever, the nurse line, the children's medicine running low. He told it simply with the same evenness he brought to everything, not asking for sympathy and not avoiding the details. Darnell did not say anything about that. He dropped Marcus at his building, shook his hand through the window, and watched him go up the front steps and pause at the door to look back once before he went in. He sat in the car for a few minutes after the light came on in the third-floor window. He thought about a lot of things sitting there. He thought about 19 years and 300 employees, and the premise his entire company was built on was. He thought about a brown leather wallet and a bench at a bus stop, and a man counting cash twice in the dark so there would be no question. Then he called Renata again. "Find out everything you can about him," he said, quietly. "And first thing tomorrow, I want the full feed from Clement Avenue from 4 o'clock tonight through whenever he left the stop. I want to see it myself." He watched the feed the next morning in his office, alone, with the door shut. He had Renata pull it to the large monitor, and he sat with his coffee and watched. He watched Marcus find the wallet. He watched him sit down on the bench and open it and read the license, and the way Marcus held the license close, reading it carefully. He watched Marcus count the cash. He watched it twice, observing the methodical way a man counts something he is going to be responsible for, not hurried, not distracted, completing the count and starting again. He watched Marcus close the wallet and sit with it for a moment. There was something in that moment, in the small stillness of it, that Darnell stayed on. A man sitting alone on a bench at night holding something he had decided to keep whole. Darnell watched it twice, then a third time. Then he let it play on. He watched Marcus put the wallet in his jacket pocket and get on the bus. Then Renata knocked and came in with a file. Marcus Ellison, 34, warehouse picker. 3 years with his current employer, no disciplinary record, 2 attendance awards, cited once by a supervisor for staying 2 hours past his shift to help close out a delayed delivery without being asked and without claiming overtime. Single father. 1 daughter, age 7. Monthly income approximately $2,300 after taxes. Current rent, $1,420. Transit pass lapsed 11 days ago due to missed automatic payment. Bank balance on the day the wallet was found, $87.12. The man had walked 9 miles to return a wallet containing $240. He had a daughter home sick. His bank balance was $87. He had stayed 2 hours past his shift without claiming overtime and had not told anyone about it. Darnell set the file down on his desk and looked out the window at the city for a long time. He had started his company in a rented room with 2 employees and a contract worth $40,000 that he was not entirely sure he could fulfill. That was 19 years ago. The company now had 300 employees across 4 cities and annual revenues that he did not discuss publicly. He had grown up in a household where his parents worked 2 jobs each and still had to decide. Some months, between the electric bill and the grocery bill. He remembered exactly what $87 felt like. He remembered what it felt like to count something that was not yours and to set it back down. He remembered the precise weight of that decision, and he knew that not everyone made it the same way, and that the ones who made it the hard way did it because there was something in them that did not negotiate with what it knew was right. He picked up the phone. The call he placed was not to Marcus. It was to the head of his company's operations division, a man named Gerald, who had been with Darnell since year 4 and who understood that when Darnell called with a name and a file, the conversation was not preliminary. "I need to talk to you about a new position," Darnell said. Gerald said, "What kind of position?" "Field coordinator," Darnell said. "Regional. We've been understaffed on oversight for a year and a half. I want someone who can be trained into the role, someone who's detail-oriented, reliable, and has the kind of character that holds up when there's no one watching." "I've got a few names," Gerald said. "I have one," Darnell said. "I need you to look at his file and tell me what the training path looks like." There was a pause. "You already picked someone?" "I watched him work last night," Darnell said. "He didn't know anyone was watching. That's the only test that counts." The job offer came by phone on a Thursday morning 3 weeks later. Marcus was on his break at the warehouse, sitting on a concrete divider in the parking structure, eating a sandwich from a lunch bag. The sandwich was peanut butter and honey because the bread was almost gone, and peanut butter and honey kept well, and there was still half the jar left. He did not think about this as a hardship. He thought about it the way he thought about most things, as the current arrangement, as the math that was in front of him today, which would be different from the math in front of him next month. He did not recognize the number. He almost let it go to voicemail. Gerald introduced himself and explained what he was calling about. He was measured and precise the way people in operations tend to be, giving Marcus the title, the department, the scope, the training timeline, and then the salary band. When Gerald said the salary band, Marcus stopped chewing. He looked at his sandwich. He looked at the concrete wall in front of him with its painted yellow parking lines and the fluorescent tube overhead that had been flickering for 3 weeks. "Can you say that number again?" Marcus said. Gerald said it again. "Is this because of the wallet?" Marcus said. Gerald said, "Mr. Ellison, the wallet is how Mr. Watts came to know your name. Everything since then is what he found when he looked into it." Marcus sat quietly for a moment. The parking structure hummed around him. Somewhere below him a car started and pulled out, and the sound echoed and rose and faded, and the fluorescent tube flickered once and held. "I'm going to need to think about this," he said. "Of course," Gerald said. "Take the week." Marcus did not take the week. He called back the next morning before his shift started, standing in the same parking structure with his jacket zipped against the cold. What he asked for before he said yes was a single clarification. Was the position something he would be qualified to do, or was it charity? Gerald told him to write down the job description, then look at his own history and answer that question himself. Marcus wrote it down on the back of an envelope at his kitchen table that night, Amara asleep in the next room, the crayon bird next to his coffee cup. He read the job description 3 times and then he looked at his own history, the 3 years. The attendance awards, the unreported overtime, the way he had learned over those years to track inventory discrepancies and flag them before they became problems, to manage relationships with delivery drivers who were chronically late without ever creating a conflict that came back to anyone, to hold a system together through patience and attention and the steady willingness to be the person who stayed. He looked at all of that for a long time. Then he called back an hour later. "I'm in," he said. The training took 4 months. Marcus's mother came down from Riverside for the first month to help with Amara, while Marcus put in the extra hours. And she brought the particular kind of competent maternal authority that had kept Marcus organized through his own childhood, the same authority that had raised him to return things that were not his, and to count them twice, so there would be no question. She cooked in the kitchen and helped Amara with homework, and told Marcus every evening that he was doing right, and that doing right accumulated. His neighbour Mrs. Polk covered the weeks his mother was not there. Amara, by then, had fully recovered from the fever that had kept her father up for 5 nights straight, and she had developed a new habit of narrating the plot of whatever book she was reading at dinner in full detail, whether Marcus was listening or not. He was always listening. He had been listening to her since she was born. He had the capacity for that particular attention that some parents have, the ability to hold the ordinary narration of a child's day with the same care they would bring to something that mattered more, because they understand that it is exactly the same thing. He started the new position in the fall. The office had windows. He had not worked in a place with windows before, not real ones, not the kind where the light came in at an angle in the morning and you could see the weather moving across the city. He spent the first week occasionally looking up from his desk at the light and then looking back down, not dramatically, not making anything of it, just noticing. The salary was more than twice what he had made at the warehouse, and the first month he received it, he sat at his kitchen table for a long time before he opened the direct deposit notification. The way you hold a gift before you open it, because you want to remember the weight of the moment before you know what is inside. He paid off the bus pass account. He paid off the 2 months of children's medical debt he had been carrying in a notebook, alongside the fever temperatures and the nurse line notes. He bought Amara new shoes for school, the kind she had asked for quietly back in September, and then stopped asking for, the ones with the small silver detail on the side, and she held them for a while before she put them on the way she held things she wanted to be careful about. He put $300 into a savings account for Amara, and the morning he did it, he sat in the car in the bank parking lot for a few minutes, with the engine running, not going anywhere, just sitting, with the fact of it. $300 in a savings account. It was not much. He knew it was not much. It was the beginning of a thing that had not existed before, the beginning of a ledger that ran in the right direction, and he held that quietly. Darnell stopped by the training facility in the 3rd week of Marcus's onboarding. He did not make a production of it. He came by, introduced himself to the cohort, shook a few hands, asked a few questions in the particular way that reveals whether the asker already knows the answers. He shook Marcus's hand last and held it a moment. "How's your daughter?" he said. "Better," Marcus said. "Healthy. She's been healthy." Darnell nodded. "Good," he said. He started to move on, and then he stopped and came back half a step, keeping his voice low enough that it was just between them. "The wallet thing," he said. "I want you to know that wasn't why." Marcus looked at him. "The wallet thing told me where to look," Darnell said. "What I found when I looked is why." Marcus did not say anything. He nodded once slowly, the way a man does when something has settled in him that he does not need to speak out loud. Darnell moved on down the row. Marcus turned back to the training materials in front of him and read the same line 3 times before he actually took it in, not because he was distracted, but because he needed to let it arrive the rest of the way. He thought, later that evening, about what it meant to be seen. Not the surface of it, not the outcome of it, but the actual experience, the way the world rearranged itself when someone looked at you carefully enough to find what was actually there. He had lived for a long time in the condition of being present without being noticed, doing the work and keeping the records and staying past the shift, and walking the 9 miles and counting the cash twice, and setting it back down. All of it, every bit of it, without anyone to see it. He had not been looking for an audience. He had been doing it because it was who he was, because his father had stood in the rain carrying someone else's groceries and had explained it to a 12-year-old with 4 words, and those 4 words had gone into Marcus and stayed there. He had not known about the cameras. He could not have known. He had sat on that bench under the ordinary light of an ordinary bus stop and made an ordinary decision and gotten on a bus. And the camera had been there because the world is full of recording, and he had simply not thought about it the way you do not think about most things that turn out to matter. What he understood now, sitting at his kitchen table with the training materials spread out in front of him and the crayon bird beside his coffee cup, was that the camera had not made him who he was. The camera had found him. The distinction felt important in a way he didn't have the exact words for, but he held it anyway. Amara turned 8 that January. Marcus took her to the aquarium on a Saturday, just the two of them, something he had been promising for 2 years and had not been able to afford. He bought her a bag of dried mango from the snack counter, which she had asked for once a long time ago and which he had not forgotten, and she ate it slowly the way she ate things she wanted to last. She stood for a long time at the jellyfish exhibit with her nose almost touching the glass, watching the slow pulse of the creatures in the lit blue water. He stood next to her and watched her face instead of the jellyfish. She said, "Dad, do you think they know they're glowing?" He said, "I don't know, baby, maybe not." She said, "I think it's better if they don't know. Then it's just what they are." He looked at her for a long moment. He thought about a night in October, a cracked shoe sole tapping against wet pavement, 9 miles in the dark with a hand resting on something that was not his. He thought about the wallet on the kitchen table next to the crayon bird, the two things sitting there together in the kitchen light. "Yeah," he said, "I think you might be right about that." They stayed until closing. On the way out, she took his hand, and he held it the whole walk to the parking garage, and she swung their joined hands once, just once, the way children do when they feel safe and do not need to say so. He drove home through the lit-up city, his daughter asleep in the back seat with her mouth slightly open and a crumpled aquarium map in her lap. Her small body fully given over to sleep the way children are when they have had a good day and their body knows it. He drove carefully, and he thought about distance. The actual distance was 9 miles. That had been real, the pavement and the dark and the cold air and the notification buzzing in his pocket, reminding him that his balance was low. All of it had been real, and none of it was the actual distance. The actual distance was the length of a decision. It ran from the bench at the bus stop to the table in his kitchen, no further. You found the thing, you sat with it, you decided. Everything after that was just the walking. He pulled into the parking spot and sat for a moment with the engine off, the heater ticking down. Amara stirred in the back seat, but did not wake. He had thought, on the night he made that walk, that he was doing it for the man whose wallet it was. That was true. He was also doing it because of his father and 4 words and a bag of groceries carried 3 miles in the rain. He was also doing it because of Amara, because she was going to be a person someday who found things that were not hers, and the man she saw her father be was going to be part of how she decided what to do. He was doing it for all of those reasons and for none of them, because at the center of the thing there was no reason, only the self that was already in him, the one his mother and his father and the years had made, the one that sat on the bench and counted the cash and put the wallet in his pocket and walked. He got out of the car and went around to the back door and lifted his daughter without waking her, her head against his shoulder, her arms loose and warm. She smelled like dried mango and the briny salt of the aquarium water from where she had pressed her hands against the glass of the jellyfish tank and then forgotten to wipe them. He carried her up 2 flights of stairs to their apartment, the one with the window he had finally gotten the screen fixed on, the one where the radiator knocked softly in the cold months and the light in the kitchen came in at a good angle in the morning and landed on the table where the crayon bird had been sitting since April. He laid her down in her bed and pulled the blanket to her chin. She moved once, just a small turn toward the wall, the way she always did. He stood in the doorway for a moment with the hall light behind him, looking at the small rise and fall of her breathing. This was the thing he came home to. This was what the walk had been for, though he had not thought of it that way at the time, had not arranged his reasons that neatly. You do not do the right thing because you can see where it leads. You do it because you have already decided who you are. He pulled the door most of the way shut and walked to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water and stood at the counter drinking it slowly. The crayon bird was still on the table. She had drawn it last spring before everything changed, and she had given it to him at breakfast with the same solemnity she brought to everything she made for him, holding it out with both hands the way you offer something you believe has value. He had told her it was the best bird he had ever seen. He still thought so. He rinsed the glass and turned off the light and went to bed. In the morning, there would be work. There would be the window with the good light and the training materials that he had now finished and understood, and the position he was growing into, the way you grow into something that was always meant to fit you, but that you could not have known until you were standing inside it. There would be Amara at the breakfast table narrating the plot of whatever she had been reading before she slept, and his mother calling from Riverside to ask how the week was going, and the savings account with its $300 and all the ordinary running forward of a life that had not changed its nature but had been given more room. Kindness does not ask to be witnessed. There is something in the order of things, some arrangement older than cameras and older than companies and older than the particular city where a man walked 9 miles in the dark, that does not let it go unseen forever. It finds its way to light. Not always, not on anyone's schedule, not with any guarantee attached. It moves toward recognition the way a plant moves toward a window, without knowing that it is doing it, because that is simply what it is. Marcus knew this now. He had known it in some form since he was 12. The knowing had not required confirmation. The confirmation had been good anyway. Have you ever done a decent thing in the dark when no one could see it and carried it all the way to the end? Leave a word below. The people reading those comments are more like Marcus than they know. His daughter's breathing was slow, and even in the next room. The city moved outside the window. The radiator knocked once and went still. The crayon bird sat on the kitchen table in the dark, exactly where she had left it, exactly where it had always been. He had told her it was the best bird he had ever seen. He had meant it then. He meant it now. He expected he would go on meaning it for a long time.